Welcome to Beyond the Backlog. I'm Nick.
And I'm Zack.
And let's talk games. Today we are thinking about what the top 10 Mario games are.
Oh boy, so what games are we including in this list?
So I looked at an article that called them quote-unquote mainline Mario games. So it doesn't include Mario Karts, Mario Parties, any of the RPG games.
Any of the sports games.
Any of the sports games, nothing like that. You're talking specific 2D platforming, 3D platforming.
And of course Mario is missing.
Yeah, it's not on the list.
Yeah, like that would make the list anyway.
Yeah, and as per usual for our top 10 lists, we each made a top 10 list. We gave points to each of them, and this is the final note. When I was doing notes on it, I think it wound up something like 8 of each of ours are on there. Or 8 for me, 9 for you, something like that.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, it was only the ones towards the bottom of our list that didn't quite get that crossover, but...
Yeah, like the top 7 are pretty cut and dry.
Mm-hmm. But top 10, we're going to start with number 10, and specifically we're going to name New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but I think there's also a little shout out to just the new Super Mario Bros. In general.
Yeah, this was like the dark age of Mario games for me.
They're almost all just like...
They're all kind of samey.
Yeah, it almost felt like a consumable, like plasticky, like junk food.
Yeah.
Just, you know exactly what you're getting. You're going to have a good time doing it, but it's not going to stay with you.
Yeah, that's not good for you.
But what made Wii stand out above the others?
I wasn't tired of the new Super Mario Bros. Formula because it was the first one that I had played. They had the new Super Mario Bros. 4DS, but I didn't have a DS at this point. But we had a Wii, and there was a lot of fond memories playing the 4-player mode with my cousins. And that's really what set it up above all the other ones.
Mm-hmm. I think, like, I did have a DS, and I had the original on DS. But I felt like it, after the last 2D Mario being Mario World, which might show up later, this one, like the one on DS, felt a little more clunky, not as pretty to look at.
Yeah.
Just wasn't as smooth. So Wii was kind of where I felt like this is what the next evolution of Mario 2D should look like, should feel like, should play like.
Yeah. And even if, say, the Wii U ones, Super Luigi U, say, might have improved on the formula, I think by that point everyone was just kind of tired of that formula.
Yeah, like I liked that Luigi U did something different and made it short levels where the emphasis was on pure speed and chaos. But at the end of the day, I think Wii was where like this idea of it being like this mega selling franchise again took off, and especially that multiplayer really just brought people together in a way that hadn't been seen in Mario games for a while.
Yeah, because I think that's the first one that you had a 4-player option.
That was the huge new feature, was 4-player co-op.
It's even 2-player. You really weren't playing at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But moving on there, we've got number 9. It's going to be Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins.
Oh, good old Game Boy.
Good old Game Boy, the far superior Mario Land game.
Honestly, the first one only takes 30 minutes to beat.
Yeah.
And is only like 4 worlds, 3 stages each or something like that.
And Mario is very much like low pixelated. You can tell this is kind of early Game Boy. Mm-hmm. Whereas Mario Land 2, as stripped back to minimalist as the game is, kind of secluded by its hardware, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, they somehow managed to make that like Super Mario World style, like 16-bit graphics, look good as like 4-bit black and white.
Yeah.
But it has like almost the same art direction.
And you have the introduction of Wario as well.
Mm-hmm. And like the power-ups, like the carrot power-up is fun. It's interesting. It's like something that you can't find in any other game. And that's what I think puts this one above a lot of the ones that didn't make the list. Is unique worlds and personality. So something like the new Super Mario Bros. Games, whichever one you play, it's like the 6 same worlds in the same order.
Yeah.
Like you go grass, desert, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Land 2, like one of them is a like inside Mario factory, one's in space. Like there's just cool things going on in this one.
And I think at this point in making this top 10 list, it's looking more at now versus influence or retrospective, anything like that. So you're going to not see quite so many of the really, really old ones. But still good, just shout out to kind of that classic mentality.
Yeah, because I think out of like the classic trilogy, there's only one I would place above. Because I would say Land 2 just does more than the original Mario or Mario 2 did.
And lost levels, etc.
But moving on to number 8, and this is one that I vouched for, and that is Super Mario 3D World. So the reason that this one stood out to me was the fact that it was bringing that 4-player multiplayer chaos that we had in New Super Mario Bros. Wii to not an open world 3D Mario, but to linear 3D Mario levels. And it's a hard sell because trying to convince somebody this is a big epic 3D Mario game, they're not going to buy it. But it's also like a different feel, a different vibe than 2D Mario.
Yes.
And I think if you look at it as its own standalone spin-off thing, like 3D Land on the 3DS and 3D World on the Wii U, just as this 1-2 punch of just this unique style of game, they are honestly some of the best designed Mario games I've seen in a while. Like some of those secrets are just fun to find in the levels because it doesn't have that same sense of could be anywhere that you find in like big open 3D worlds.
Yeah.
But it's also not like obvious there's a gold coin somewhere on a 2D screen like in 2D Mario's. I feel like it has that perfect balance of exploration and just linear like speed crushing out levels that I love about Mario games. And the fact that it is 4-player co-op has led me to bring this one out more than I think any other Mario game for cooperative play.
Yeah.
I think that alone is why I had to put it in my top 5 personally and why it made the list just on my word alone.
Yeah, it's kind of like my version of Mario Bros. Wii for yourself, right? If that's your main go-to co-op multiplayer experience, then definitely.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've played through almost the entire thing, the two of us, which I could be wrong because I have beaten this game like 7, 8, 9 times with different groups of people. It's just that fun for me personally.
Yeah, I know we had started it. I don't know how far. I know we haven't beat it because it's not beat on my list, but.
Oh, whoa. What are you doing later today? No.
But coming in now at number 7, we've got the Mario Bros. From that trilogy, the early on, Mario Bros. 3.
Easily the best one.
Definitely the best of the NES Mario games. Because this is the one that I would still bring out. Like, Super Mario Bros. I'll bring out and I'll play. But you play it for like 5-10 minutes. And then you're like, okay, cool, I did my thing. Like, Mario 35 was a great way to experience that game.
Yeah, like I don't find myself wanting to play through every level of the original Mario. I just want to warp pipe my way through and get it done with. Exactly.
Yeah, whereas with 3, you kind of have a lot more freedom of that. The controls are still pretty tight.
And another thing, like we said for Super Mario Land 2 is each world has different themes and unique features that you don't find in other games.
Yeah.
Like Pipeland or the giant world.
And from a more storytelling perspective, its whole thing about it being a play and you kind of seeing that is kind of cool. It's them trying to do a couple of longer storytelling before you have the means to do it.
But I think if somebody asked me, like, what is a great example of an original NES game that is just still very playable today?
Yeah, it's on the list.
Yeah, it's definitely up there for me, right next to like ice hockey in terms of one that I would just bring out just to play when I want that nostalgia.
Exactly.
All right, moving on to number 6, and our first big 3D open world-ish. Actually, I'd say Galaxy has more in common with 3D World because it's like linear 3D environments. But anyway,
Yeah.
the first official 3D open world Mario is Galaxy. And boy, I had a lot of fun playing through this the first time, but I dropped off with it very soon after I beat it. Like I played it for like a week and then promptly forgot about it. And it wasn't until I played the 3D All-Stars is when I really appreciated how much Mario Galaxy did. Because I think I was just a little Mario'd out at the time, at the start of the Wii era. That's when I was getting into like my Zeldas and Guitar Hero. Didn't have time for silly little kids games.
It's when I got into like shooters and that.
But I really appreciate just how unique this game feels to play, and having these little gravity centered orbs that you can wander around, and just playing around with that is so much fun. You can see how much creativity went into this one central mechanic.
I really like Mario Galaxy. And it's telling that it's on the list with how much I hate the Wiimote. Because I like the more traditional controller, mouse and keyboard type of thing. Any type of motion I've never been a huge fan of. But it's just a well-made game, a well-designed game. I wish it had an option to just do it with a controller, and I think I would like it more. Which I think is the case on the 3D All-Stars. I genuinely just forgot that it was on there. So I know how I'm going to play it when next time I get a chance to do that.
I think my only like gripe I had with it was that they sold it as being like, oh, here's this 2-player mode, but it's literally just a second person being a cursor that can like interfere with enemies or pick up little star bits. Yeah,
you're playing it with your 4-year-old brother who wants to play with you. So you're like, okay, here's a controller. You can point at it and collect things for me.
So I the way I see it is it was kind of that step in between Sunshine, which was just a 3D platforming game, and 3D Worlds, which was like linear corridors and multiplayer. And I think looking at it, Galaxy really bridges that gap and was that necessary step that Mario needed to just like stay fresh and continue on and show that it can push boundaries and like try new central mechanics and succeed.
Yeah.
And I think it's succeeded at almost everything that Mario has done since then, as we're going to get to in some of the games above it.
Yeah, the last note I have on Galaxy is some people have this as their favorite game or one of their favorite games, and I can totally get that. I think it's just something that we maybe missed due to our age and kind of how we started gaming.
Yeah, because I genuinely did not care when Galaxy 2 came out.
No.
I didn't play that one for several years afterwards. So I have memories of Galaxy 2. All I remember is Yoshi's a part of it now.
Yep.
And there wasn't a big like Comet Observatory to like wander around in. Even just that alone, that like overworld hub, is one of those things that is just so memorable about Galaxy. And that's what I think puts it like right on the cusp of that top 5 for me.
Yes. Yeah, I thought 6 was a good spot. We had some discussion after we did our quote-unquote points for it to move some things around, and I think sliding Galaxy into 6 was a really good call, because then like the top 5 is in my mind, it's a clear top 5.
But like neither of us put Galaxy, I think both of us put it at 6 on our list.
So I think so.
It just felt like that was the cutoff point between the exceptional and the above average.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So let's move on to the exceptional.
Yeah, number 5, Super Mario Sunshine. This one is, you had it on your list, but I had it much higher, I believe.
I think this one was pretty low on my list because every time I play it, I end up getting frustrated by something, and I've never 100% completed it. The blue coins is just egregious.
I could see that.
But beyond that, I love that game.
Yes. Yeah, it's one that I really enjoy just beating.
Just playing on like a sunny, like summer afternoon.
Yeah.
It feels good.
It's one of my favorite movements in the game. I really like that you have your own style of movements, and then you also have Flood to be able to give you its own brand of difficulty, right? Like what kind of nozzle to use, being able to utilize them well to really add to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was my favorite movement until Odyssey came out.
Fair. Odyssey just does so much that it's like, it's after playing Odyssey, it's hard to go back and play an old one because you just have so many options at your disposal.
Exactly. I like the fact as well that Sunshine takes place not in the Mushroom Kingdom proper.
Mm-hmm. Right. Not only does it not take place in the Mushroom Kingdom proper, there is a strong connected theme between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can pull off unique ideas like a theme park, but make it make sense in terms of it's like this touristy island.
Yeah.
So they can do a lot of similar themes to one another without making it feel like you're rehashing the same thing.
Yeah. And my issue with the game and as a whole is that some of the levels just kind of suck. Like not worlds, like specific levels just kind of suck.
I feel like the first 5 you go to are all excellent examples of using Flood and the movement of it, but then like Noki Bay and Pinta Village. Those are probably the last 2 I do, just because I genuinely get bored. Like, I just don't have fun in those ones.
Mine's the hotel.
Oh, the hotel is my favorite.
So I don't like the first mission.
Yeah.
I don't like the Manta Ray mission. The other ones, love it. Inside the hotel, amazing. One of my favorites.
A little haunted hotel mansion. Oh, man. That is one of my favorite uses of just the setting and the unique features of that game combining. It's like one of those things that, like, even though we put, say, Mario 64 above it on this list, I feel like the levels of Mario 64 are just arbitrary blocks of geometry floating in space. Whereas it makes sense that there would just be some resort mansion on this island, and why not make it haunted just to have something interesting going on there?
Yeah. But then cool ways to go through it, and then the casino and all that. It's a really well made game that I think doesn't get its flowers because it came out on GameCube.
Fair. I also felt like it wasn't as nice to control on the 3D All-Stars pack because you don't have the ability to press in your Flood to different amounts. I know they had some sort of workaround for it. I just don't remember exactly how the controls went, but it just doesn't feel as nice to use Flood. But a much more recent game that does feel very nice to play, and this one's led all by me because I'm the only one that's played it. Number 4,
it's true.
Super Mario Wonder. And even though Nick has not played it, I feel like there's a very strong case to be made for it deserving a spot up in the upper echelons of any Mario game that have ever existed. I've gone pretty in-depth about it in a couple of episodes, so I'm not going to rehash all the same things I've said before, but the Wonder Flowers that they added are like the spice up, the shake up that 2D Mario needed after Mario Maker.
I will say that it's the first one in a long time of a 2D that I'm like, oh, that's good. That looks fun.
And it also it really highlights how long that era of new Super Mario Bros. Went, where Nintendo wasn't really allowed to mess with, the developers themselves, the artists weren't allowed to mess with that design of Mario.
Yeah, it was very samey.
It was very samey. And when they announced Wonder, it was like holy crap, they're actually doing the art style different.
So they can do that?
Yeah. And they made the art style one where these cool effects of bending and stretching or making things dark and turning you into all these cool effects just work so well in this new art style. And just so much variety. Every single level has a purpose. Every single wonder effect has like a unique gameplay style that just brings something different. Even if it's not your favorite 2D Mario or just Mario game in general, I still think it is objectively one that has to be high up on the list because it merges all of the things that make 2D Mario so good together and evolves it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I wanted to say for that one. We'll move on to our number 3 on the list.
And I would say we have a clear top 5. I think we also have a pretty clear top 3.
Yeah, I think
it's the 3 pillars of Mario games. You kind of expect them to be there. Wonder might get up there, maybe make it a big 4 or knock one down, but number 3 is the classic Mario 64.
All right. So we played this one together a few years ago.
Yes.
I remember at the time you said it might have been your favorite Mario game.
Yes.
So what's changed?
Odyssey came out.
Fair.
So it kind of had the same effect that Tears of the Kingdom had on Breath of the Wild for me, where I just see that is the more superior game. And it knocks it down more because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it dropped from 1 to 3, mostly because of Odyssey. There was a strong case that I could have put this as my number 2. I don't know if I did. I might have. I genuinely think I did.
I think you did.
But it's just, Odyssey does what it does better. But Mario 64 is, I think, like a quintessential, you can still pick up and play this N64 game now and have a blast with it.
It's like trying to describe Ocarina of Time to somebody who wasn't there when that released and like revolutionized how adventure games in a 3D environment could exist.
Yeah.
And the point I made earlier about Super Mario 64 was kind of just arbitrary, like geometry floating in space. That might be true. But even within that, they managed to create a few very distinct levels so that even now looking at it almost 30 years later, you look at one screenshot of a level and you know exactly where it is because everything stands out so distinctly. Like having the size of the levels is perfect for like 7 different objectives, I think. Whereas like Sunshine, the size of them maybe doesn't always require 10 different shines.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the ones after the Bowser Jr. fights are definitely unnecessary.
Yeah, they're just kind of bonus.
Mm-hmm. Whereas Super Mario 64 is like the game that I want to 100% complete every time I play it because each level just warrants you sticking around in it to 100% completion.
Mm-hmm.
They're just the right size and so memorable. It's like you don't get lost in them. They're just really good levels.
The music's all well done.
Mm-hmm.
This point is more something I think because I've played so much of it, but because you play so much Mario 64, you understand more the mechanics of the movement, right? I think it's an early predecessor to all the movement that we had through Sunshine, through Galaxy, through Odyssey, through 3D Land.
Like just being able to long jump.
Yeah. Long jump, so side important. Jump, wall jump. That's what really does it. The fact that it's one of the first ones to utilize that type of camera in the 3D space and it doesn't suck when some of the other ones suck is just fantastic.
And goes to show how well designed those levels are. Like, even though everyone kind of is a central pillar that kind of lower levels exist around it, it makes sense in terms of your camera as you're climbing up. You want to keep spinning around this object. So I think just the way they even did levels like that,
yeah,
versus other 3D platformers tried like tunnels and like turning around and going back the other direction. Like I specifically am thinking of like Chameleon Twist or Gex on Nintendo 64, and those ones, it's just like the camera is not meant to do that. No matter what direction you swing it from, it just feels like your platforming is off.
Yes. But with 64, it's not. It's still crisp.
It's still good to play today.
Yeah. But we'll move on to number 2 here. Speaking of good to play today.
Oh, yes. So this is actually my number 1, but my number 2 is the overall number 1. So I can't complain too much, but Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, which was a launch title back in 1991, older than we are. But this game, I think, has surpassed any and all potential of me being objective about it. I just love this game. It was the first video game I remember beating when I was like 4 or 5 years old. First time I remember 100% completing. And I reached the point I was able to do little challenge runs. Like I can do the 11 exit speed run essentially. Mm-hmm. I can beat the entire game 100% without hitting the switches that give you extra blocks to stand on. And especially when you're going through Star Road, that requires a lot of very precise flying challenges to get all the keys. So I don't know what it's like to be a brand new player in Super Mario World. But as somebody who has been playing it consistently for 25 years of my life, it is one of the greatest video games of all time, especially one of my favorite Super Nintendo games, and easily the peak of Mario at the time when Mario was like the video game mascot. Like, I think there's a reason that even though things like Sonic came out at this time and a lot of other mascot platformers trying to challenge them in the 90s, Mario came out on top, and it's because they genuinely had the best game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, compared to other 2D Marios, even afterwards, I think it's the easiest to control. The abilities that you get are the best ones. I don't know why they didn't do a cape forever after this. Mm-hmm. The fact that this game introduces like all the Koopalings and having them be their own distinct endpoints to each self-contained area is really cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Mario 3, they were Koopalings, but it was more just a skin to the final boss of each area.
Exactly. Whereas these ones have their own personality, have their own design.
Yeah.
You can kind of see through them all. The worlds themselves are very iconic as well.
Mm-hmm. Based on like different foods and stuff.
Yeah.
Which again, I think is a very specific enough theme that you can make a lot of cool things out of it while keeping it all coherent. Like doing
exactly
donut plains and the chocolate bridge and forest of illusion. Like I remember all of these areas, or not the chocolate bridge, the chocolate area right before the end. Either way, like I remember all these areas because like they're visually distinct, and like when you're in the levels, like you can tell which area you're in just from the theming and the music.
Yes. But it was knocked out because Mario World was my number 3, and my number 1 is the top game, Mario Odyssey.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, I think keeping all of my experience of Mario World off the table, I probably think Odyssey is the better game.
Yeah. And even from the first announcement trailer where they had it, like you could tell like, oh, this looks clean.
Yeah, you knew you were onto something special.
Yeah. When
they had like a big musical number sung by Pauline.
Exactly. Yeah. They have so many just little callbacks.
Mm-hmm. And I think this one has, again, perfectly sized levels for the amount of objectives in them. A good variety of different distinct areas, even if they don't kind of have that like central theme keeping them together like some other games do. Like, there's no reason that this frozen winter wonderland and this little boiling pot of lava filled with different food obstacles should be in the same game, but it just works.
Yeah.
Because it's Mario.
If you can't tell from some of the earlier ones on our list too, I care about speed and movement in my platformer games. And this one, I think, just has the best speed and movement in it. via the captures, via rolling, long jumping, all that stuff. It just really makes not traversing the world a chore.
And it also makes watching speed runs really interesting.
Yes.
Because of how many movement options there are.
Yeah. And this Mario is the one that got me back into it. Because for a while I did Xbox games, PlayStation games. My Nintendo was Mario Karts, Mario Parties, Zeldas pretty well for 10 years. But Mario Odyssey, heck yes.
Oh yeah. And I think it was really smart of them to launch it the first year of the Switch as their big holiday launch title.
Yes.
Because I think Zelda being cross-platform just made it that the anticipation was too high. You needed that at launch. Mario Kart was like a re-release, and then they had a couple of things in between, but Odyssey was like that.
Odyssey was the big, this is what's going to get people to buy the Switch.
I want to say it was October of 2017 is when it came out.
So, yeah.
Which, from the time it was announced, wasn't even that long of a wait.
No.
It was so hyped to be a part of it the first time around. I went right out and got 999 moons in that, got my gold Odyssey balloon. And that's something that it was my first Nintendo game. I 100%ed the day it came out since I want to say A Link Between Worlds on 3DS.
Yeah. And I think Odyssey has a really good middle ground where it appeals to casuals as well as the completionists because it's not too bad to just go around completing the game. If you're not enjoying a world, you only really need to get a certain amount, not a lot. If you really liked New Donk City as an example, you just got all the moons there. It just makes it easier to get through the rest. If you didn't like New Donk City, that's fine. You only needed a certain amount to move on anyways.
And it's also kind of the perfect middle ground for doesn't matter how old you were and doesn't matter how big of a Nintendo fanboy you are. Because I feel like the biggest of big Nintendo fanboys, guilty, would have found all of these little nooks and crannies full of all of these different throwbacks and Easter eggs. If you're just a casual Nintendo fan, it is just fun to pick up and play and explore. And there's so many new characters and new races and new features.
It harkens to, I don't know if you had the same experience I did, where Nintendo games at a point almost felt too kiddie.
Well, and that's kind of what I was implying with that lull between A Link Between Worlds and Odyssey. Like, that was a 5-year gap. That was the Wii U era, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drawn in by a lot of things Nintendo was doing at that time.
No, and then you kind of get older and then you're like, you don't know if Nintendo's making good things again, which they were, but it's also like, I don't care. It's just a fun game.
Yeah. There was definitely a healthy amount of skepticism to be had after the Wii started out strong, but then kind of fizzled out into a very casual audience.
Yes. And then the Wii U, they kind of just messed up with marketing it.
Yeah, messed up with marketing it, and then all they could kind of keep going on it for several years was that middle of the ground, easy and cheap to make side sort of stuff.
It was all on the strength of like the first party games. And then Platinum.
And then Odyssey, I think, when it was announced in that first January Direct before the Switch came out, was like a huge part of the reason that me and a lot of other people were ready to get on board with the Switch.
I would have anyways just Zelda.
Oh, yeah.
But I had a friend of mine who just got Breath of the Wild on Wii U instead because there's no point. But then Odyssey, now you just want to get on that train. But that's it. I think it's a good list.
I think so. And if you disagree, then jump on up, Superstar, and show us what you got. Tell us how we're wrong.
Yeah. But good day, good night. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening.